There are moments when you see a face before the face arranges itself. It may happen in the instant before someone answers you, in the small delay before their politeness returns, in the almost invisible narrowing of the eyes when your happiness is mentioned, or in the silence that follows your refusal. You notice something not yet dressed for society. It is not always evil. Often it is simply naked. And this is what unsettles you most: human nature, when it is caught without its mask, is rarely monstrous in the theatrical sense. It is more ordinary than that. It is hungry, calculating, frightened, desirous, wounded in its vanity, and strangely practical. You begin to understand that civilization has not removed the animal from man. It has merely taught the animal how to speak at dinner. I have noticed that many people do not discover human nature through philosophy, but through a small social accident. A friend receives your success with words of congratulation, yet the warmth does not reach the eyes. A colleague praises your work, but immediately adds a minor correction, as if your rise must be reduced to a manageable size. A relative asks about your plans, not because they wish to understand them, but because they need to locate your movement within the old hierarchy. These are not dramatic revelations. No thunder sounds. No villain removes a cloak. Yet something in you registers the slight dislocation between speech and motive. The persona, which is useful and necessary, slips for 1 second. And beneath it you see not the person's public identity, but the pressure working behind it. The disturbing thing is not that people wear masks. Without masks, society would collapse into unbearable immediacy. The disturbing thing is how many people mistake the mask for morality. They believe themselves kind because they have learned the gestures of kindness. They believe themselves honest because they have not yet been placed in a situation where dishonesty would profit them. They believe themselves loyal because no competing advantage has appeared. Character is not revealed when the room is calm and everyone is being watched. Character appears when desire, fear, envy, or humiliation passes through the body faster than the mask, can organize a respectable expression. In such moments, the face becomes older than the person. It belongs not only to the individual, but to the species. You may have seen this during a disagreement in which the subject itself was small. Perhaps you corrected a detail. Perhaps you said no to a request. Perhaps you did not respond with the admiration someone expected. Suddenly, the conversation changed temperature. The voice remained polite, but the atmosphere hardened. What had been friendly became administrative. What had been affectionate became exact. You were no longer speaking to the person as they imagined themselves to be. You were speaking to the injured authority beneath the surface. This is one of the first glimpses of human nature without masks. People often experience disagreement not as difference, but as demotion. A simple no can be felt by the unconscious as exile from control. A correction can be felt as an attack on rank. A boundary can be felt as betrayal. The conscious mind says, I am only upset because of what happened. But beneath it, another voice says, you have placed me where I did not consent to stand. The mask tells a story about principle. The body reveals a wound in power. One should be careful here, because the purpose is not to despise people. Contempt is merely another mask, often worn by those who cannot bear seeing their own similarity to what they condemn. The more precise observation is this: most conflict is not about the stated object. The stated object is the cup. The unconscious is the hand gripping it. Human beings reveal themselves when the object is too small to justify the intensity of their reaction. That disproportion is a doorway. Behind it, one finds the old machinery of pride, insecurity, possession, and fear. The persona is not a lie in the simple sense. It is a social skin. Without it, no one could enter a workplace, a marriage, a friendship, or a public room without bleeding private impulses everywhere. The mask protects both the wearer and the world. But when a person identifies completely with the mask, the unconscious must speak through interruptions. It speaks through sarcasm disguised as humor, through concern that secretly controls, through advice that diminishes, through compliments that measure, through silence that punishes. You may sit with someone who says, "I only want what is best for you," and yet your body feels smaller in their presence. You may hear a person say, "I am happy for you," and yet something in the room tightens, as if your joy has taken oxygen from them. This is where instinct often knows before consciousness admits. The mind argues with evidence. The body notices tone. The conscious ear hears the sentence. The unconscious hears the appetite inside the sentence. Human beings are not only what they say, they are also what their presence does to the nervous system of another. A mask can arrange words, but it cannot always regulate atmosphere. This is why, after certain conversations, you feel tired, though nothing openly hostile occurred. You have been negotiating with an unseen motive. You have been answering not only the words spoken, but the hidden demand beneath them. Reassure me. Admire-me. Remain beneath me. Do not change too quickly. Do not expose what I have avoided. Do not make me conscious of myself. There is an old truth here. Politeness often conceals the invoice of belonging. Many relationships offer acceptance, but only while you remain psychologically affordable. When human nature appears without masks, it often appears first as envy, because envy is the emotion that civilized people most quickly deny. Anger may be justified. Sadness may be displayed. Fear may be confessed in certain forms. But envy must be smuggled under moral language. I have seen people condemn ambition in another when what they truly cannot bear is the evidence of their own refusal. I have seen people call someone arrogant simply because that person no longer asks permission to exist. I have seen praise turn into suspicion the moment the praised individual becomes difficult to possess. Envy rarely announces, "I suffer because your life reveals my unlived life." Instead, it says, "You have changed. You think you are better. You are becoming strange. Or I am only worried about you." This does not mean every criticism is envy. Only a childish mind thinks so. But there is a distinct quality to envious criticism. It is not interested in truth, only reduction. It does not wish to understand the thing it criticizes. It wishes to make it smaller until the critic can breathe again. You can observe this in a group when one person begins to emerge from the assigned role. The atmosphere rearranges. Jokes sharpen. Support becomes delayed. Questions become tests. The group, which once loved the familiar version of the person, now experiences the growing version as an accusation. Human nature is tribal before it is philosophical. It asks first, "What does this mean for my position?" and only later, if at all, "What is true?" This is why the mask of fairness is so often worn by the instinct for rank. People may speak of equality while secretly demanding that no one disturb the emotional arrangement in which they have learned to feel safe. There is a symbolic image I return to when considering this matter: a well-lit room after a gathering. Long after the guests have gone, with all the chairs slightly out of place, during the evening, everyone sat properly, spoke properly, laughed at the correct moments, lifted glasses, performed warmth, and maintained the shape of civilized relation. But afterward, in the empty room, the arrangement tells the truth. One chair is pushed too far back, as if someone withdrew without admitting it. Another leans closer than it should, as if someone pressed too eagerly toward influence. A glass remains untouched beside a seat where politeness concealed discomfort. A napkin is twisted, though the mouth above it smiled. The room remembers what the faces denied. Human nature is often like this room. During the encounter, the mask produces order. Afterward, the unconscious leaves. Furniture, displaced. You recall a phrase that arrived too quickly. A laugh that came too late. A compliment with a hook inside it. You remember the pause before someone answered good news. You remember how they looked away when you spoke with certainty. These details are not always proof of moral failure, but they are clues. The unconscious does not write essays. It leaves traces, and those traces become visible only to the person who has ceased needing every interaction to confirm innocence. To see without masks is not to become suspicious of everyone. It is to stop demanding that human beings be simpler than they are. The collapse of illusion often begins when you realize that many people do not love truth. They love the version of truth that protects their self-image. In conversation, this becomes painfully visible. You bring a fact, and the other person brings identity. You describe what happened, and they hear what it implies about them. You point to a pattern, and they defend an intention. The mask says, "I want honesty." But when honesty arrives without decoration, the mask calls it cruelty. This is because truth threatens the persona more than falsehood does. Falsehood can often be managed. It can be ignored, negotiated, explained away. But truth, when it is seen by another, produces exposure. A person may forgive being wrong more easily than being seen while wrong. This is a severe distinction. The ego can repair an error, but it resists the humiliation of being transparent. Therefore, in many relationships, the conflict is not between truth and lies, but between perception and image. You may say, "I noticed that when I needed you, you disappeared." The other replies, "How can you say that after everything I have done? Notice the movement. The concrete event has vanished." In its place stands the biography of the mask. The person defends the role, the good friend, the generous partner, the loyal sibling, the reasonable colleague. The role must survive, even if reality must be rearranged around it. Here, human nature is revealed in a particularly unsettling form. People will often sacrifice truth to preserve the continuity of who they think they are. They are not always consciously lying. In many cases, the lie protects them before they even know they have chosen it. This is why apologies are so revealing. A true apology requires a temporary death of the mask. The person must stand, even briefly, without the costume of innocence. But many apologies are only negotiations for restored comfort. "I'm sorry you felt that way," preserves the mask. "I was under stress," explains the mask. "I already said sorry," rushes to reinstall the mask. One can hear the difference between remorse and social repair. Remorse is quiet because it has encountered fact. Social repair is impatient because it wants the old arrangement back. You may have experienced this after being hurt by someone who quickly became irritated at the duration of your response. Their injury to you was allowed to happen slowly, perhaps through repeated neglect, dismissive tone, betrayal of confidence, or subtle contempt. But your recognition of the injury is expected to disappear quickly because it disturbs the image they wish to maintain. In this moment, human nature without masks looks not like cruelty, but like inconvenience. Your pain becomes inconvenient to their self-concept. They do not necessarily wish you harm. They wish you to stop reflecting the harm back to them. This distinction is important because it is more common than hatred. Many people do not attack because they are evil. They attack because your perception has become a mirror in which they cannot stand. A person may prefer losing you to seeing themselves accurately through you. When the illusion collapses further, you begin to see that goodness itself can be used as a mask. This is perhaps one of the more difficult observations. Because the mind wants morality to be clean, Yet in life one repeatedly encounters kindness that demands debt, generosity that purchases obedience, humility that seeks admiration, and patience that silently records superiority. There are people who give not in order to give, but in order to create a moral account. Later, when you refuse them, the account is opened. Every favor becomes evidence. Every sacrifice becomes a chain. They do not say, "I wanted power over you." They say, "After all I have done." This phrase is one of the small windows into masked human nature. It reveals that what appeared as love may have been investment. It reveals that some forms of care are not free. They are delayed claims. Again, one must not become cynical. Real generosity exists, but it has a different atmosphere. It does not tighten when you become independent. It does not resent the absence of control. It does not keep its own virtue sharpened for future use. The masked form of goodness cannot bear your freedom because your freedom interrupts the hidden contract. The person believed they were loving you, but beneath love there was possession. They believed they were helping you, but beneath help there was authorship. They believed they were protecting you, but beneath protection there was fear of losing importance. The mask of goodness is dangerous not because goodness is false, but because goodness, when possessed by the unconscious, becomes the most respectable form of domination. You see this especially in moments of change. When you alter your behavior, stop explaining, withhold automatic agreement, decline invitations, change your rhythm, or simply become less available for the role others assigned you. The masks around you begin to move. Some people become curious. Some become distant. Some become quietly hostile. Some suddenly accuse you of being cold, selfish, proud, or unrecognizable. What they often mean is that you are no longer functioning inside their image of you. The human being loves freedom in principle and resists it in the person nearby. This is not because people are consciously malicious. It is because every relationship is also an unconscious map. Each person knows where the other usually stands, what they usually tolerate, how quickly they return, how much guilt will move them, how much praise will soften them, how much silence will frighten them. When you change, the map fails. And when the map fails, the instinct for control appears. It may appear as concern, it may appear as ridicule, it may appear as sudden moral judgment, it may appear as withdrawal disguised as disappointment. The mask says, "I do not understand what is happening to you." The unconscious says, "I no longer know how to reach the part of you that obeyed my expectations." Human nature without masks often reveals itself as the panic of lost access. People are most sincere when their usual influence no longer works. There is another layer, more private and more difficult. You also wear the mask. It is always easier to study the exposed face of another than to feel the edges of one's own persona loosening by. You too have presented patience when you were secretly bargaining for recognition. You too have called something principle when it was pride in formal clothing. You too have offered silence not as wisdom, but as punishment. You too have mistaken your wound for your insight, your sensitivity for truth, your restraint for superiority. If you refuse this recognition, then your perception of others becomes merely another defense. The person who sees masks everywhere but never in himself becomes possessed by the very thing he condemns. Individuation does not begin by declaring others false. It begins when the observer becomes included in the observation. This inclusion is unpleasant. One discovers that the human being is not divided into the masked and the unmasked, the authentic and the false, the conscious and the unconscious, as if these were separate tribes. Each person is a shifting negotiation between what he can admit and what he must conceal in order to continue living with himself. You may notice this in a conversation where you are accused unjustly and feel the immediate desire to become noble in your own imagination. You prepare the perfect sentence, not merely to clarify, but to appear above the conflict. Even your dignity becomes theatrical. Even your refusal may contain a wish to be seen refusing beautifully. This is why self-knowledge is never sentimental. It removes the pleasure of believing that only others perform. Dreams often understand this before waking life does. A man may dream that he is walking through a public square wearing formal clothes, while beneath the clothes, his skin is covered in mud. A woman may dream of speaking elegantly at a table while animals move beneath the floorboards. These images are not accusations in the moral sense. They are compensations. The unconscious shows what the daytime personality excludes. It says, "Here is the rest of you." The mask is not destroyed by such a dream. Rather, it is placed in relation to something older. The civilized voice must meet the creature under the floor. In ordinary life, the same dream appears through embarrassment, anger, attraction, envy, and disproportionate irritation. A person you barely know annoys you intensely. Why? Perhaps because he displays openly what you have spent years suppressing. Someone's confidence disgusts you. Perhaps because it resembles the forbidden life in you. Someone's weakness enrages you. Perhaps because it mirrors the dependency you refuse to acknowledge. Projection is one of the ways the mask protects itself from inner contradiction. It throws the unwanted figure into the world and then attacks it there. This is why certain people provoke reactions in you that exceed their actual behavior. The face you cannot bear in them may be wearing your discarded expression. To see human nature without masks means seeing not only what people hide from you, but what you hide from yourself by noticing them too intensely. The most unsettling recognition comes when you understand that the mask does not merely conceal weakness, it also conceals desire. Much of social life is organized around the management of wanting, but people want admiration, relief, possession, advantage, erotic confirmation, moral superiority, revenge, safety, status, permission, escape. But desire, if spoken plainly, would frighten the room. Therefore it becomes stylized. It dresses as preference, concern, principle, taste, humor, advice, tradition, professionalism. In a workplace, someone may resist your idea not because it is poor, but because your idea threatens their authorship of the room. At a family gathering, someone may mock your independence, not because it is absurd, but because it reveals the compromises they have made with obedience. In friendship, someone may become cold when you no longer tell them everything, not because they love intimacy, but because information was their form of possession. Desire rarely appears naked. When it does, it can be almost shocking in its simplicity. A person wants to matter more than they admit. A person wants you near. But beneath them, a person wants truth. But only if it does not cost them authority. A person wants love. But without the vulnerability of being known. A person wants forgiveness, but not accountability. The mask refines the grammar, the instinct remains blunt. One of the cold observations of life is that many moral sentences are only instincts that have learned vocabulary, yet there is also tragedy in this. And one must see it clearly. The mask is not only manipulation, it is also protection against shame. Many people have never encountered themselves without terror. They cling to roles because the role is the only structure preventing inner chaos. The good person, the strong person, the clever person, the victim, the rescuer, the rebel, the rational one, the loyal one, the misunderstood one. These are not merely performances. They are shelters. When life removes them, even for a moment, a person may feel as if he is falling. This is why exposure so often produces rage. Rage is frequently shame that has found a weapon. You may point out a contradiction gently, and the other person responds as if you have committed violence. In their inner world, perhaps you touched the wall that holds back a flood. This does not make their reaction justified, but it makes it intelligible. Human nature without masks is not a courtroom in which we simply condemn. It is an anatomy theater. We see the muscles beneath the clothing, the involuntary contractions, the old reflexes of survival, the ego defending its little kingdom. A person may defend a false image not because he loves falsehood, but because he does not know who he would be without it. This is why many prefer familiar suffering to honest uncertainty. A false self, if it is stable, can feel safer than a true self not yet formed. Individuation enters precisely here, not as comfort, but as the capacity to remain conscious while the mask loosens. The task is not to rip the face away. Those who pride themselves on being brutally authentic often merely replace one mask with another, the mask of bluntness, the mask of superiority, the mask of being ungovernable. The deeper movement is more exacting. You begin to know when you are performing agreement, when you are using kindness to avoid conflict, when you are using insight to avoid humility, when you are using distance to avoid being affected. You begin to feel the moment your voice changes in order to be admired, the moment your silence becomes a strategy, the moment your morality secretly asks for applause. Such knowledge does not make you pure. It makes you less easily possessed. There is a difference between having a mask and being had by it. A mature person can wear the necessary face for the world while not forgetting the older forces beneath it. He can be courteous without believing courtesy is the whole of goodness. He can be strong without needing every room to confirm it. He can apologize without dying. He can be seen in error without collapsing into hatred of the witness. This is rare because it requires a kind of inner poverty, the willingness to lose the luxury of a flawless self-image. Most people would rather lose a relationship than lose the story that makes them innocent. Return now to the empty room after the gathering. The chairs remain displaced. The glasses catch the last light. Nothing dramatic has happened. And yet everything is visible to the one who knows how to read the arrangement. This is how life teaches you. Not through one grand revelation, but through many small rooms after many social evenings, a delayed reply that contains punishment, a compliment that hides rivalry, a concern that masks control, a joke that reveals contempt, a silence that says more than accusation, a sudden warmth when you are useful, and a sudden chill when you are free. Over time, the room inside you becomes quieter. You stop needing to accuse each chair of being crooked. You simply see where it stands. And in seeing this, another loneliness may enter. Because the world of masks is warmer than the world of accurate perception. Illusion provides companionship. Clarity often removes the furniture you used to lean on. But the loss is not merely bitter. When you no longer demand that people be identical with their masks, you can observe them with a colder compassion. You can see the envy without worshipping it, the fear without obeying it, the desire without being seduced by its costume. You can also see your own hand moving a chair out of place and recognize, perhaps with some discomfort, that you too leave traces after the guests have gone. What human nature looks like without masks is not a single face. It is a sequence of exposed movements. It is the hunger for rank inside moral speech, the fear of insignificance inside generosity, the wish for control inside concern, the shame inside anger, the envy inside criticism, the desire for innocence inside apology. the longing to be seen inside every performance of indifference. It is also the fragile attempt of the human being to remain bearable to himself. This is why the unmasked person is not always more truthful in the way people imagine. Sometimes when the mask falls, what appears is merely another layer of defense. More primitive, but not more real. Beneath politeness may be anger. Beneath anger may be shame. Beneath shame may be grief. Beneath grief may be an ancient demand, never spoken aloud. Let me exist without being reduced. And yet even this demand can become a mask if it is used to avoid seeing the harm one causes while defending one's existence. The descent does not end neatly. The psyche is not a room with one hidden object. It is a house of rooms. And in each room, someone has arranged the chairs to prove a different story. The one who seeks truth must eventually abandon the fantasy that the final room will contain a simple self, clean and shining, waiting to be discovered. More often, what waits? There is a figure that looks back with your own eyes and asks why you needed the mask to be either a sin or a salvation, when all along it was the place where your fear learned to resemble your face.